ABA has long been associated with compliance, like getting kids to follow directions, sit still, or complete tasks. But the future of our field is shifting, and in compassionate ABA, it's not about control, it's about connection. We'll explore why building authentic relationships with our clients is the true foundation for meaningful progress. Hi, I'm Shira.
And I'm Shayna. We're behavior analysts who create weekly content about how to teach children with autism so that they make real progress. And we create shareable resources to make your job just a little easier. Today's topic is all about compassionate ABA therapy. And if you want more videos like this, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell to stay updated on new video releases.
So, raising teenagers is like the best example of why connection matters more than compliance. Because if any of you have ever tried to get a teenager to do something that they didn't want to do, like it's impossible. And not everything that I do with my teenagers is a success, but I did have this one success story that I thought was a good example of why that connection piece is so much more important than, using strategies and tools that kind of force our kids to listen to what it is that we want them to do. But obviously, we have rules. And in my house, one of those rules is a curfew. My kids have to be home in time for curfew. But it's kind of hard to enforce because if they don't come home for curfew, like there's only so many punishments you can put in place and they'll just stop caring, which is not really helpful. However, my kids, one time my daughter really wanted to miss curfew and she was out and she texted both of us and said, is it okay if I stay out late? Neither of us responded, probably because I'm always sleeping before my kids even enter the house.
That's the other reason you can't always
Also
enforce
true. You'd have to be up all night to actually know what time they come home. So, and she didn't hear back from us. And so we got another text message that said, because I care about our relationship and my respect for you, I'm not going to stay out late. And it was really sweet because it wasn't about fear of punishment and it wasn't about that, like, she was doing something that she didn't want to do because we were forcing her to. But in this situation, and again, not always, we had enough of a connection that she cared about, not breaking that connection. And I think a lot can be applied to the learners and the students that we work with, that connection really has to come first, where of course there are rules and boundaries and things that we have in place, but it's going to be the connection that really helps our learners hold to those boundaries.
So let's talk about reframing ABA beyond this compliance piece. And so often, I hear, oh, I just got a new learner, we have to teach them compliance. We've got a new learner in, they don't have that compliance yet. So let's first teach compliance. And I kind of cringe when I hear that word compliance because I think of, it's not true, but I think of, somebody like standing up straight with their arms out and shaking their fists at somebody and going I know we don't do that, but at the same time, compliance focused approaches seem to be fear-based or can be fear-based. And what we're arguing for is a relationship-based approach instead. And we're not saying, like Shira said before, like you have to set boundaries. It's not about that. We have to set boundaries. We just need to make sure we need to set those boundaries with kindness. So making sure that yes, I gave this instruction, you're going to follow it. But it's not because of fear of what's going to happen if you don't follow it. It's more you're going to follow it because we have this mutual respect for each other.
Yeah, one of the best examples of this shift was something I heard from Dr. Gregory Hanley, where we're so used to this like first then instructional control, where first you do something that I want and I'm going to follow through and enforce this boundary, and then you'll get what you want. And the way he described it was, now let's try to flip that. Flip it to then the then should be first. First, you're going to get everything that you want. You're going to be happy. You're going to be safe. We're going to play. There's going to be no demands and you're just going to be settled. And then I may ask you to do something that's hard, but it's going to come from a place of trust, not out of control. I'm not going to be threatening or holding boundaries that you can actually complete. But I'm going to very slowly ask you to exit your comfort zone for a very, very little bit and then go right back to your comfort zone. So he calls it, HRE and all those terms within SBT. But the premise is that our students are learning to do things from a starting point of safety. And it doesn't mean we never ask them to do things. It doesn't mean there are no demands. It just means that we're placing those demands from a place of trust, not control.
Absolutely. So I think the really important thing from there was not all the acronyms that Shira just spouted out. Just kidding. It's, the
That's
important thing
fine.
about Gregory Hanley is, HRE, SBT, PFA, some more acronyms here. HRE, happy, relaxed, engaged. PFA is practical
Practical
functional
functional assessment.
assessment. Wow, I'm slipping here. And skill-based treatment is SBT. So it's really like that approach, but it's more than that. It's about really developing that relationship first. Like Shira said, the then comes first. So it goes beyond pairing. You can go in, you can pair with a kiddo for 10 minutes and then, put some demand on if they have already had ABA. If they've never had ABA before, instead of going in right away with a token board or, holding up, something in your hand and saying, do this for me, and then you can have this, you want to go in and say, hey, I'm going to be fun and let's play together. I want you running towards me instead of running away from me. And once, students are running towards you, then you can put some demand on. I think about it, I was playing with a kiddo the other day. I was in a therapy session and, just they've got an open concept house. So, mom was around doing things and, this child has a really big bond with mom. The child stayed with me. I had no, like, I wasn't, holding up a treat or anything like that in my hands. Like, I had nothing that was keeping that child with me except for the fact that he wanted to be there. And I loved it. I actually don't take that for granted whatsoever. This kiddo took a while to get there, but he would way rather be with me than running to his mom. And I thought that was so, so super cool. And that's all about the role of relationships. And now I'm at the point where I can put some demands in and he's following my demands, even though it's not about, hey, do this and then you get this. It's about, hey, let's play and let's have some fun. And I'm going to teach you some things along the way.
And we talk a lot about, we're saying the word compassion a lot. Like what is compassion? And really compassion means that I'm able to understand where another person is coming from. I could see their point of view, there's perspective taking and all of that. You don't, it comes along with being able to empathize with another person, but really it's being able to look at our learners and understand that this might be hard for them. And that I say this a lot, but they're not giving you a hard time, they're having a hard time. So a lot of compassion comes with reframing the way that things are happening. They're not misbehaving or they're not a bad boy or a bad girl, but they might be struggling with something right now. And I think having that perspective allows us to understand more about our learner and then be able to, build trust, build that relationship. And something else I often say is the best behavior plan that I've written can't replace what a relationship can do. And I've had so many learners who, their relationship with the teacher, with the therapist just wasn't working. And I could write the best plans and offer the best strategies and it wasn't fixing it. But then building, maybe they got along with a different person or a different teacher and they had a really strong relationship of trust and they didn't need a behavior plan. Like things just went away because so many behaviors come from a place of like fight or flight. They're feeling unsafe and they don't know how to express themselves or they don't have the opportunity to express themselves. And so we really have to think about reframing what behavior looks like and implementing compassion, which is understanding where another person, where our learner could be coming from.
And when I think about that, I think about dignity and I think about respect. And those two words are huge. And, building in that dignity into every interaction. So we have another video. It's episode 113 on maintaining client dignity while you're teaching.
Yeah, it comes along with them, giving consent and assent and being where they want to be. It comes
Sitting
along.
with me instead of going to their mom.
Yeah. And the way we interact with them and it, not being sarcastic and not talking down to them. And all of these things really help build compassion, but they also help us stay, understand where our learner is coming from. Like they're a whole person, and they're coming with their challenges and their thoughts and their perspectives.
So we talked about pairing and building rapport a little tiny bit. But as Shira said, we're shifting the then to the first and the first to the then. Does that make
Mm.
sense? Fun from the start, right? That ongoing interaction. And then slowly, building in that interaction or that demand after you've built that rapport is massive. So what are some practical strategies for BCBAs and therapists?
So the first thing I often say is like you should be the most fun. Meaning like if a child is really obsessed with or really enjoys playing with cars, and you don't want to take those cars away and then say, like, first play with me and then you'll get the cars. But what you want to do is have some way of making those cars so much more fun when you're playing with them. Maybe you're throwing them up in the air, or maybe you're like, dropping them in a funny way that they can't do themselves. So if there's a way for you to make the interaction more fun than without you, that's a great way to start building relationship. It's not about placing the demands or removing their preferred items. It's about using their preferred items, but enhancing it. And you being the thing that makes that toy or that interaction more fun is really going to help build that relationship.
I always come with a bag of toys to a therapy session. So, I find that learners, when the toys are in their own environment, they can get satiated from them. Even if they're just out on a shelf at the center, there's still toys that they see every single day. Whereas when I enter with new toys, I'm not really a novel person, but I've got the novel things with me. And what does Shayna have today? And I think that that really does help as well. But in my bag of toys, I have things that are more fun with me than without me. So for a little kid, for instance, I'll use those wind up toys. They don't know how to do those wind up toys. They need me to wind up the toy. So they bring that toy to me to help them wind it up. Other things would be like spinning tops or things that you shoot up in the air, like things that they need an adult for. Except when you get those kids who like really watch you intently and then
They have
try and do
great
it
fine motor
themselves. And
skills.
you're like, oh, but those are the kinds of things that I use for younger learners. For older learners, sometimes it's really just about pretend play. I think I've used this example before, but like all, play, quote unquote, going to the moon. And, I can go off on this huge, like long tangent of like, I don't know what happens actually in the depths of my mind when I get into play. It's like, okay, we're gonna go on this rocket ship. Let's get under the table and pretend, grab that broom, grab this, and we're grabbing things from all over the room and making a rocket ship out of it. And it's more fun because of the imagination of it all. So trying to be like that. And if you're not like that, that's okay. That's not your personality. Find YouTube videos that might give you some ideas. Maybe the learner has some ideas as well, but really look and follow that learner's lead, and seeing what they like to do is huge. And the other thing that I would say is look at the environment. So you're bringing toys with you, which is also part of it, but then look at the environment. Sometimes I'll walk into kids' places and it looks like Toys R Us exploded all over the place, right? They have everything you can possibly imagine. How are you going to be more fun than that? And how are you going to compete with that? So oftentimes I will make sure that, toys are out of reach, right? So they're in clear containers up on a shelf. They need me to bring down the clear container. If parents aren't going to do that, seeing if you can do therapy in another room that doesn't have all of those distractions. If you're at a center or in a school, is there a way that you can only have one or two toys at a time and you're the giver of good things versus the kid going, wow, there's so much here and I'm either super overwhelmed or, hey, I don't need you at all because everything's just right here.
And as the BCBA, talk about this with the RBTs, with the parents, with all the team members who are working with this learner to make sure that, there's consistency, that we're all in the same place and that we're not going to be, just looking at the data, but that relationship building is so, so important. And because, this is all part of ABA. And, many people will say, well, this is always how ABA was. And, that's debatable, but it is really should be a focus of everything that we do. It's part of our science is to work in ways that benefit the learner. And this really is one of them. And one of the misconceptions that is out there is that, well, compassion means no demands. And it means that they're going to get everything that they want because I can't place the demands on them. And that's absolutely not true. It means holding boundaries with kindness. It means starting from a place of safety before making those demands. But it definitely doesn't mean no demands. And I think that's especially important with, parent-child relationships, that, parents do hold boundaries for their kids, and it could be kindly, and that's safe for kids. But it's not because kids are afraid of punishment that they're following the rules. It's because, they understand them, they respect their parents, they have a relationship with their parents, and that's the focus.
I think about, if a ball, playing with a ball and the ball goes out onto the street and a car is going by, would you let your child run out in the street to get that ball? And the answer is no. Like it's a safety thing. Like you're not letting that kid, no matter how much they tantrum, you're not letting that kid chase after that ball because they could get hit by a car. That car is coming. Think about that with your ABA as well. Like you have to set some boundaries because it's a safety thing. Like they need to be able to follow specific directions, but they also need to have some fun. So it is that delicate balance. But just making sure when you are setting those boundaries, it's with that compassion.
And it really matters more now probably than ever in families who are looking for this as a field, with what the BACB is coming out with in terms of how we can offer assent and consent and all of these things that our field is really moving in that direction. And part of that is because we're seeing over the years that, compliance might work. There's nothing necessarily wrong with terms like follow through or extinction. Like there are ways that compliance may really create short-term behavior change. And I see it with a lot of the learners who are young, and we don't feel like there's anything wrong with, being a little bit using a little more physical prompting than they might need because they're so little. Like you would do that with a 2, 3, 4 year old. You might pick them up and carry them from one place to the next. But if they're going to be needing that when they're 10, 11, 12, it's not going to work. So compliance really only works short term, and it might even be effective short term. But relationships will really create that lasting long-term change because there's so much more potential that you could do when you're going from a place of relationship versus a place of compliance.
Going back to your teenage daughter, I've got a teenage daughter as well. This is why Sharon and I can laugh. Compliance may have worked when they were 2 or 3 or 4. Do this because mommy said, but if I say that now, there's no way. So for all of you who have teenagers, it's the same kind of thing. So, that's what Sharon meant by, compliance might work short term. It might work for a few years, but yeah, you just wait.
For more information on compassionate ABA, click the link on or around this video or in the description to check out our cooperation over compliance video series. We also encourage you to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any future videos and leave a like and comment below if you have further questions.